My next story, I would like to speak about one of the most famous people of the 20th century, Norma Jean Mortensen. She wanted to try to make it in show business. Ben Lyon of 20th Century Fox had a cattle call in 1946, but he gave a very specific instruction: blondes to the left, brunettes to the right. And this dizzy brunette went to the left with the blondes. Ben Lyon started laughing. Darryl Zanuck was in the audience at that time. He started laughing too. Kind of muttered to himself, what an idiot. Anyone here think she was an idiot? Because as she then walked across the stage, they say she's the only woman in history who was able to walk horizontally. Every eye was on her. And before that night was over, she had a 6-month contract with 20th Century Fox. That was her moment of leading with her left foot. 6 months went by. She got another 6 months. Then Columbia Pictures hired her. Then she went back to 20th Century Fox for 7 years. And in 1955, this dumb woman started her own agency, her own recording studio, her own film production company, and basically destroyed the studio system in Hollywood. Really dumb, huh? Well, during those 7 to next, 14 years, some of the greatest movies in American history starred this woman. Gentlemen prefer blondes. How to Marry a Millionaire, The 7-Year Itch, Bus Stop, Some Like It Hot, The Misfits, movie after movie after movie, iconic movies of the 20th century. Of course, by then, Norma Jean Mortensen had changed her name to Marilyn Monroe. It's amazing the dent in the universe you can make when you lead with your left foot. Bob Feller of Easton Tank Services Corp. I've known a long time. He always has led with his left foot. As a quantitative money manager, there are businesses that I look for. And the businesses I don't look for are the ones with sex appeal. I don't like those businesses. Autonomous electric vehicles, robots on the moon. I don't like them because that sex appeal is priced into the price already. You know what I love? Miserable, disgusting businesses, bottom-feeding, blood-sucking cesspool businesses nobody wants to be in, but they're essential. And when you take those blood-sucking businesses nobody wants to be in that are essential, and you add productivity gains, you add technology, you increase profits, you decrease overhead, you increase free cash flow. That is my kind of business. It's predictable, it's discountable, it makes money, it can't die even during a recession. Give me those miserable businesses. Well, here's one miserable business for you. Does everyone realize $25 billion of crude oil is transported in this country by railroad tank cars? Everyone know this? 25 billion is transferred by railroad tank cars. Well, what's the miserable business? Someone has to clean the damn tank cars. And you know who does? A bunch of guys with squeegees and power washers sit there for 3-4 hours scrubbing out the damn tank car. And after that, it takes weeks to dispose of the wastewater. Along comes Bob Feller, 36 years as an environmental scientist. And he said, there's got to be a better way to do this. Bob's resume reads like a who's who in environmental scientific innovation. Read the credits on the business plan so you can get an idea. But this idea was, what if we introduce robotics to this miserable business? What if we introduced robotics and reduced the cost of cleaning those rail cars by 75%. What if we introduced robotics and decreased the time to clean those tank cars by 75%? What if we raised margins for every refiner on these services by 75%? What if we increased their profits? What if we increased their free cash flow? So he led with his left foot, and Bob Feller did it. You know, take that miserable, lousy, bottom-feeding, blood-sucking, essential business that can't be destroyed even by recessions, make it more profitable, lower that overhead, increase free cash flow, and you know what you have? You've got a winner. Let me introduce you to one. Bob Feller.
My name is Robert Feller, and I'm actually an associate scientist with Wood Environment and Infrastructure, with the 6th largest engineering firm in the world. And I've been at Wood for approximately a year. Prior to that, I've literally globe-hopped doing environmental cleanups and restoration work. I've been in Kuwait cleaning up oil lagoons that were left after Saddam got pushed out by George H.W. Bush. I've done tar pits up in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, radioactive waste out. I'm still standing and I can't figure this out. Most people my age would say, maybe it's time to retire, maybe it's time to think about kind of putting your feet up and enjoying life. And I decided, got an opportunity here. So I have my Wood Environment and Infrastructure business cards and copies of the business plan for the tank cleaning service, which I have to admit is one of the sexiest things out there, okay? And I'll get to that in a couple of minutes. Several years ago, about 30 years ago, I was introduced to a company out in California called Industrial Innovations Incorporated, and they had developed a robotic process for cleaning above ground storage tanks. And at that time, I was doing some consulting work for what at that time was the Tosco refinery in Linden, New Jersey. We brought them out, they did a number of tanks, and compared to the conventional method, and the conventional method is you put a bunch of guys in moon suits under air in the tank, and they literally take these 5-gallon Home Depot buckets and fill them full of sludge and carry it over to the manway and dump it into a roll-off box. It's inefficient, it's dangerous because you're under air, and if for any reason your air system goes down, and this has happened, you might have 8 guys over 100 feet away from the manway, and the air gets cut off for whatever reason, and they're trying to get through waist-deep muck in the moon suit, fully faced up, trying to breathe in order to get to the fresh air outside the tank. So I've looked at this and I've seen the accidents, I've read the OSHA reports, and this is always something that I wanted to try and get into, but there have been multiple obstacles along the way. And I'm not that I want to pat myself in the back, but my consulting services for the work that I've done kind of precede me in some regards, and in the hazardous waste business, I'm a known commodity. And what has happened is that coming back from a trip to Binghamton, New York, I'm driving, I don't remember the name of the road, I decided to take a country road on the way back. Out of the corner of my eye, I see this beautiful little pristine river that I'm driving alongside, and on the other side is this endless line of rail cars, railroad tank cars. So I kept driving and I kept seeing, and it was a 12-mile long run of these railroad tank cars, just sitting there idle. I thought that's a little bit strange. I got on the computer and I Googled railroad tank cars, and I found out that there is an acute shortage of railroad tank cars. And that's because of the number of accidents that have had previously, just like we now have for oil transportation on water, we have double-hulled ships. Well, a similar situation with railroad tank cars, because the number of accidents, we now have double-walled railroad tank cars. So I did a little further investigation, and I found out that there is a company out of Kansas that is literally has some good old boys, and I went and visited them, who are going inside these railroad tank cars with pressure washing and squeegees And because there are some good old boys from Kansas, and because there's nobody from OSHA observing this, there's a lot going on that wouldn't fly. If OSHA were to be made aware, the fines would be astronomical. The short version is they're squeegeeing all this stuff out, this muck. And what this muck is crude oil from the Balkans. I think we're all aware of the fact that we got an oil rush up in North Dakota. Well, the thing about that crude oil, it's high in asphaltenes and it's high in paraffins. So what happens is they put it in the railroad tank cars because there's no pipeline to get it down to the refineries, and the refineries in Philadelphia. And by the way, if you saw the news this morning, the Philadelphia Energy Solutions refinery blew up overnight. There's going to be a massive cleanup. And while I was coming in here, because I happen to be working at PES on another project, the people at PES also know that I'm trying to get this tank cleaning business started. And there is a crude oil storage tank that they asked me if there's any way that the equipment could be made available on short notice, which it can't. But that gives you an idea of the knowledge of the people in the refineries. They know what has to be done and they want it done quickly. I'm getting off topic. So all of the oily water with the paraffins and the asphaltenes is going to a little waste oil blending operation called Hazelton Oil up in Hazelton, Pennsylvania. And I know the owner. We've done business together. And he's telling me the stories about this. So I've been in touch with all the major refineries that are getting these railroad tank cars. They're paying demurrage on this 12-mile run of rail cars, which is putting a chokehold on shipping the oil down from North Dakota. And the chances of a pipeline being built anytime soon are pretty remote. So let me go back to the original premise here. The company is Industrial Innovations Incorporated. They're in Stockton, California, and they make a piece of equipment called a Supermax, and it's a self-contained tank cleaning system. You pull it up to the site, and you park it, level it out, fill it with about 7,000 gallons of water. Oh, sorry. It has an onboard heating system. It heats the water up to 180 degrees. It jets the water out, 300 pounds per square inch, 300 gallons a minute. And it melts the hardened crude oil into a very liquid, easy to flow material, sucks it back into itself, and phase separates it. There's an automatic skimming device that recovers the oil. The solids drop to the bottom, go through a screening process, and are discharged virtually dry. They will pass the paint filter test at a landfill. And for those of you with a non-hazardous waste background, what that means is if you have a paint filter and you put solids in it, anything drips out, the landfill won't accept it. It has to be dry. So the solids will pass the paint filter test and readily be accepted, or they can just be added into an asphalt blending mix and go on the road, because asphalt is tank bottoms from refinery distillation. And what we're looking for is $4 million. And with the $4 million, that gives us the operating capital to start the business, to buy the equipment. I'm getting phone calls already from refineries because everybody realizes what I'm trying to get done. They have had so many accidents on the East Coast in refineries from the tank cleaning operations. You know, part of the problem is, they use the expression, you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. And so you can get a 40-hour OSHA-trained worker who doesn't have the common sense to come in out of the rain. Says a lot about me walking over here in a rainstorm. And they make a mistake, get injured, it becomes a reportable accident. So this is a totally robotic system and has the capabilities to clean an above-ground storage tank or clean a railroad tank car without human entry until afterwards for the final inspection. So all the danger is alleviated, And on top of that, you have a situation where you're going to recover all of the oil. So in each one of these railroad tank cars in Pennsylvania, there's anywhere up to 3 inches of what's called clingage sticking to the inside of that railroad tank car. When we hit it with 300 pounds of pressure at 180 degrees and 300 gallons a minute, it liquefies, completely liquefies, drains out the bottom, goes back into the system, phase separated and recovered. You could do 4 railroad tank cars in 1 hour. So the economics on this are very attractive. The fact is we use the wash water over and over and over again, so I don't have disposal cost in that regard. And this is the best part. Whatever you recover as far as oil is yours. I mean, there's your coffee money for the crew for the next 2 months. It's just, it's a beautiful thing. And same thing with regards to barges. And there's barges all over this area moving oil. And because of the Coast Guard inspection requirements, they all have to be inspected. So they've got to be cleaned out because the Coast Guard isn't going to go downside a cargo hold to do an inspection. So you go in, you clean it, whatever you recover out of that, because the way barges work, if I'm going too fast, let me know.
No, you're doing beautiful.
Okay. Barges are designed with these huge pumps to move very viscous liquids at high volumes. And the problem is you don't always get a clean batch of oil going into the cargo hold. So in order to avoid jamming your pump, which would be costly and downtime would be ridiculous, the pump nozzles are usually at least 3 inches off the floor of the bottom of the barge. So when you're cleaning an oil barge, all that oil's got to be pulled out, and the barge owners look upon that as a waste product. They don't want to know about it. And so you can get 30, 40, 50,000 gallons of recoverable, saleable oil out of the bottom of a barge just by cleaning it, not to mention the clingage on the sides.
What's that percentage of compared to the barges versus the railroad tankers of recoverable? Is it per cubic foot? How would you describe the percentage of recoverable oil per either train or barge?
Okay, the railroad tank cars right now are carrying bulk and crude. They are 23,000 gallons in capacity per rail car, and I'm going to estimate you'll get 800 gallons of recoverable product out of each rail car from the clingage. With regards to a barge, the problem is there's no rule of thumb because all barges are different sizes. And it's going to depend. If it's been carrying crude oil, there's a process called lightering. Because of the depth of the harbor, the ultra-large crude carriers can't actually get into the berth.
How do they get cleaned? Sorry.
Well, I'll get this.
I don't mean to interrupt.
So the way this works is that there's a process called lightering, where somebody like Fred Bouchard in the Staten Island will send a bunch of barges out, and they will offload that crude oil into the barge and bring that over to the refinery and pump that out. Now, after that barge has had crude oil in it, if Fred Bouchard decides he's just going to continue using that for crude oil, he can go up to 2 years without having to do a Coast Guard inspection. If he were going to do a product change, like to take gasoline from Spenton-Bush Red Star, which is Hess, he'd have to do a complete cargo hold cleanout before he put gasoline in it. So and whatever is the retainage inside that barge is a waste product to him. This is a different world. It's like, I don't know anything about the Diamond District in Manhattan, but I know that this is a different world. This is, the oil brokering business is just off the charts. It's almost like a Jason Bourne novel, because there's so much going on behind the scenes you don't know about. And I found it fascinating. It's just like in the hazardous waste industry I've been in for 36 years. There's so much that the general public doesn't understand how all these things came to be. And there's regulations which, if you understand the regulation, it goes, oh, that makes sense. When EPA was formed under the Nixon administration, their goal was to control petroleum. And because petroleum was a consumer commodity, under the guidelines that Congress had set up, they couldn't touch it. So the fact is, by characteristic, oil is a hazardous waste. But by definition, it's a consumer commodity. So this is one of the few instances where a consumer commodity can be a hazardous waste, because you as an individual, by definition, cannot generate hazardous waste, which was kind of interesting. In the early days, there was a product called Silvex. It was commonly available at any hardware store. It was Agent Orange. And I went through many household hazardous waste cleanups where people would bring in all their old alkyd enamel paints, and there'd be a bottle of this Silvex. And at that time, those of us in the waste industry knew what it was, and we had to quarantine this bottle of Silvex. Now, you got somebody who's bringing it in, it's been in their garage, they don't think about it. We knew what it was, and because of the regulations, we had to send it up for incineration to Canada because there were no facilities in the United States that were licensed to take it. That doesn't mean they couldn't appropriately dispose of it, but they weren't licensed to take it. It's all about regulations. That's all it is. So we have a situation where, getting back to crude oil by definition is a consumer commodity. But tell that to the shrimp down in Louisiana after BP blew the well. I mean, we have opportunities here with this business that I'm trying to get off the ground. If you look through this, you'll see that Industrial Innovations Incorporated has operations in California. Question?
Just a question. Who doesn't want to see you succeed?
I don't know. I've had, this is, nobody, I don't think there's anybody who doesn't want to see me succeed. It's just,
No competitor?
oh no, there's no competitor. There's no competition. Right now, there are 3 companies in the Middle Atlantic states who do above ground storage tank cleaning and railroad tank car cleaning. And they do it the old-fashioned way. I'm sure you've seen guys in moon suits, face mask, carrying the air hose on their back. And they go inside and they muck it out.
So are these people potential investors in your work?
No, they're competitors.
That's what I thought. So these people don't really want to see you succeed?
No, because if I get this thing going on the East Coast and the Middle Atlantic states, there are 5 refineries. There are 5 refineries and a gazillion railroad tank cars.
And what's your minimum investment?
We need $4 million to get this off the ground.
But what is the individual's questions?
Any other questions?
Bob, that was simply outstanding. You did great.
Thank you.